Hey, what's up guys? Lightning14 here, soaring back into everyday life with another video. And in this video, we're going to be turning a rival knockout and changing it from a mediocre single shot blaster into a potent half dart sidearm. It has an internal clip that holds several darts and can fire several times without reloading, and shoots half darts at around 130 FPS. So we're going to get right on into it today. I'm going to be taking this completely stock rival knockout, and I'm going to walk you through the process that it takes to convert it into one of these. So let's get started. So before you start this project, there's going to be a couple of tools and materials that you will need for this. You will need obviously a rival knockout, and you will also need a few materials. You will need some 1/2" Schedule 40 PVC. The piece I have here is 8 inches, but what size you want, what length of PVC you want, it will depend on what size you want your magazine for the internal clip to be. You will also need some 1/2" CPVC. Now this one is kind of important. You have to take a dart with you to the hardware store when you check the fit on it, and you'll want a piece that has not a super tight fit but not a super loose fit either. You have to bring a dart with you to the store to test the CPVC pipe individually, because it varies widely from piece to piece. That's just kind of the way it is. It has a constant outer diameter, but the inner diameter is not regulated. So you want a dart, you want a piece that you can just kind of easily push the dart in with a slight twist. You don't want it to be super difficult to put in, but you don't want it to be super loose either. You just want something that has a reasonably tight fit without being too tight. You just want it to be able to be pushed in without requiring very much force or very much twisting. So yeah, that's pretty important. You must take a dart with you to test the fit of the CPVC. So yeah, but CPVC is super cheap. You can find this at pretty much any hardware store on the planet. Ace Hardware, Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Same with the 1/2" Schedule 40 PVC. This is also super common. Shouldn't be hard for you to find at all. And you will also need some tape. You will need this masking tape. I'm using masking tape because I couldn't get any thicker tape to work. The masking tape works well because it's super thin and easier to get just the right amount of it with. You could also use painter's tape, since that's a similar thickness. Okay, and then for tools, you will need a hammer. A rubber mallet would be preferred, but it doesn't really matter. You also need a ruler. And you will need a Sharpie for marking your pipe and measuring it. You also need scissors for flaring your pipe. And you will also need a hacksaw for cutting the pipe, a screwdriver for opening your knockout, and you will also need flush cutters or a knife or a Dremel for performing the breech modifications on the knockout. So that's all the tools you will need. Let's get started on modifying the knockout. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the knockout, and we're going to modify the breech so that it opens farther to allow for easier loading of half darts. So we're going to take our brand new rival knockout, and we're going to just unscrew it, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the internals and what you need to do from there. So let's do that. It's nice if you have a little screw bin or something to keep your screws safe, but I forgot to bring one, so that doesn't really matter. One thing to note is that I always use a flathead screwdriver when unscrewing Nerf blasters, even if it's Phillips head screws, because I find that the flathead screwdrivers strip the screws a lot less easily. Note is that you don't need to unscrew the screws in the priming handle here. Oop. And there we go. So there you can see we have our internals of our knockout, our plunger tube, and our breech. That's what we're going to be modifying. This is our trigger lock right here, or I mean our safety. I'm going to leave that in. Just going to be messing with the breech right now. So you can just lift it out like that, and you can see that right here on the breech there are these little tabs here, and those stop the breech from being able to open fully. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna snip those out with our flush cutters, and it should be pretty simple. You could also do this with a Dremel or even a really sharp knife, but the flush cutters are my favorite tool for this kind of job. This is what it should look like when you're done. You can see we've carved out the tabs on that side, and for reference, this is what the other side looks like uncut. Hopefully that's showing up on camera, but you can see we've got the little tabs there, and on this side we have cut them out. So you can pause the video and look at that if you want to look at that a little further. You want to get it as smooth as possible, but don't worry about it being super smooth. It's okay if it's not, you don't have to like sand it or anything like that. Just get it reasonably smooth and it's good enough. So now I'm going to do the other side. It's the other side done. See, we've carved out the tabs as good as we can. And again, it's not super smooth, but it's still plenty good enough. So yeah, there's damn ants crawling in my blaster. Alright, so that's the breech modification. That should be good enough. So we're going to take out the air restrictor, and we're just going to start trying to yank this piece out. Kind of cutting at it with flush cutters. We're going to yank that part out. Just kind of cut away at it and yank at it until we have a clean hole here. Yep, it seems to work pretty well. We're just kind of cutting it, snipping away at it and pulling it out in chunks. So there you can see we've pulled out all the guts of the air restrictor, the spring and the little piece. It's still got some plastic in there, but it doesn't really matter because it's still completely open and there's nothing in there that will actually really restrict the airflow aside from the little tabs in there that held the air restrictor. Done with that now. And another thing I forgot to mention is don't lose or don't take out this rubber piece. This is padding for your plunger tube, and it's very critical that it stays there. If you take it out, then the repeated force of the plunger tube, or the plunger slamming into the plunger tube, can break it, and this piece helps cushion it against that. Alright, so this piece right here, this little orange, oh come on, stay in frame. This little orange triangle thing, this is garbage. You can throw it away, as is this long bar looking thing. They are both locks and you do not need either of them. Alright, so now that we've taken out the AR, the locks, and modified the breech, you should be able to assemble everything together and it should look like this. Feel free to pause the video there if you want to look at things. And the little extension spring for the breech just goes on this peg here. So yeah, that's that. You could also theoretically put like some Teflon tape or something around the O-ring, but that's not really necessary. So we're not even going to bother with that. Alright, so now everything should be good, and you can simply put everything back together and reassemble everything and screw it all back together. Alright, so now that we've buttoned our knockout back up, you should notice that the breech opens up much farther and then it does stock. You can tell because there's this giant gap here. On this normal breech, it does not open that far. So that is good because that will allow us more room to load in our half darts. So now we're going to get started on making the barrel. This is what we are making. It is a piece of 1/2 inch Schedule 40 PVC with CPVC shoved inside with some tape wrapped around the end to get a seal. So you're going to take your piece of 1/2 inch Schedule 40 PVC. This one barrel that I made here hits right at about 130, and I want it to hit a little bit under. So we're going to this one we're going to be making it a little longer. So as it turns out, the chrono barrel that I was using to get the FPS readings for this video was reading a little high. I had the opportunity to test both of these barrels on an actual chronograph recently, and I discovered that the shorter barrel that I originally made was hitting about 120, so perfect for a 130 FPS cap, and that the longer one that I made in this video was actually hitting about 110, so a little lower. So if you want to be hitting right under a 130 FPS cap, go with the measurements that I'm throwing on the screen right now. Otherwise, if you're okay with having an extra dart and a little bit lower performance, then go with the measurements that I talk about in the video. Keep in mind that you can play around with different magazine and barrel length combinations to get an FPS that's more suitable to you. Obviously, a longer magazine will add more dead space and decrease performance, and a shorter one will increase performance, and using a bit longer barrel can also boost your FPS as well. So that's that, and if you want to make the one that's closer to 130 FPS, go with the measurements on the screen. So for this, I'm going to be using 8 inches of half-inch Schedule 40 PVC, and then a 3-inch barrel. So first thing you want to do is cut your PVC to length. You can use a hacksaw for that, and just whatever size magazine you want. Just remember you're going to be pounding in your barrel a little bit, so keep that in mind when you're figuring out how many darts you want to fit. Okay, so once you've done that, then you're going to want to take a scissors. You could also use a sharp knife for this, but I prefer scissors. And then you're just going to want to flare the end of the CPVC by taking the scissors and going around the edge of the pipe. You want to do this so that there's a very smooth transition, and so that there's not just a flat edge on there. And you just want to go around and shave off little pieces of PVC. I find this is easiest with scissors, but you can also use a sharp knife. And the reason we are doing this is to make the loading of the half darts a little easier. So that's probably good. You can see we have a nice flared transition there. Nice angle on it. So now we're going to do the same to the other end. And the reason we're flaring the other end is to make the hammering in of our piece of CPVC a little bit easier. So that's good. You don't have to do it quite as much for the end that you're hammering the CPVC in. You can see hopefully that we have flared that out rather nicely. Now you're going to take your CPVC and measure it to length. I'm going to be using 3 inches. So you're going to cut it and measure it at 3 inches with our ruler. And we're just going to cut it there. And we're going to make a mark at 3 inches, and then we're also going to make a mark at half an inch in from that. So at 2.5 and at 3 inches, because that will give us a measurement for how far we're going to pound it into the PVC. You could probably get away with less, you could probably do more. I'm just doing half an inch because it's a nice easy number. So we're going to take our hacksaw and we're going to cut it down at our 3-inch mark. Ideally you would do this with a bench vise, but I forgot to grab mine. Whew. Okay, that's that. Now you're going to want to take your scissors and deburr the pipe. So just cut off all the nasty sharp edges on it and all the little pieces, and do the same on the other end. And then you're going to want to do the same thing that you did for the PVC and just flare both ends. I find that flaring the end makes them load in just a little bit easier, and you want to have a smooth transition again, so flare it all the way. Looks like that. And then just do the other, same for the other end. So that's that. And you want to just blow any shavings or dust out of each pipe. So that should be good. Now we are going to shove our CPVC into the PVC up to our little 1/2 inch mark that we made right there. And that'll be that. So you can just brace it on something. I'm not going to use this glass table because I don't trust it. But we're just going to hammer it on in. And we're going to just hammer it in until we reach our 1/2 inch mark. And that's that. And now our inline clip is almost finished. All we need to do now is wrap the tape around it. So we're going to take our masking tape and we're going to do a couple of wraps. I think I used maybe 2 wraps on the last one. You want to make sure it's straight. And I find it's better to go too much at first and then slowly take off pieces of it until we get a perfect fit. So we're just going to start with like 3 or so. Then we're going to test fit it in our knockout barrel. We can see that's too tight because I can't get it in. So now we're going to take off a small piece, maybe a 1/4 turn, and try again. Still too tight. So we're going to take off another 1/4 of a wrap and try again. Getting closer, but still not there. I'm gonna just keep on doing this until we get where we can. Ooh, that one's pretty close, but not quite. I'm gonna take off another small piece and test fit it. Oh, that one's real close. A little bit more. And that is perfect. And so that should be a pretty airtight seal. You want to make sure that your breech can still open and close properly. You might need to back out the pipe slightly, just that the breech will latch properly. And that is it. That's all it takes to build this knockout. We're gonna load it up. We're gonna do some firing now, I guess. You can also optionally, like I did on this one, you can add a couple more wraps of tape farther down just to get slightly better seal. But if you've got one good seal, that's really all you need. So yeah, let's do some firing with this thing. We've got our breech, and we're just going to load in 5 half-darts. So that's how many this size magazine takes. And that's 1, 2, oops, dropped one, 3, and 4. Oh man, butterfingers. 5. Close the breech, prime it, and we're good to go. And one more. You can also load full-length darts, although it's a little bit more tricky, and I'm not sure why you want to. So we've got some men gun darts here, so we're just gonna squeeze it in. They don't fit as nicely, but they do work. We've got 3 of them there. Close the breech, and here we go. Like so. So congratulations, you've turned your boring rival knockout from a mediocre single-shot rifle blaster into a potent half-dart shooting sidearm. Hopefully everything in this guide was laid out in a manner that was easy to understand and follow, but if you have any questions or comments on anything in the process, please leave them in the comments section down below, and I will do my best to get back to you and help you with any problems that you have. The rival knockout is a great blaster for a first mod. It's super simple to modify, and hopefully I've shown that in this video. If you want to go beyond this mod guide and expand upon it a little bit, another couple mods people like to do is cutting down this front section to make it more minimized and make it easier to holster. And now that it is actually powerful and accurate enough, you could attach a scar barrel and maybe an optic as well. Another thing that you can do is you can play around with the length of PVC used for the magazine as well as the barrel. If you bought a full length of it at a hardware store, you probably have plenty left over, so that should give you a ton to experiment around with different lengths of both magazine and barrel combo. I'm slowly working through my backlog of content and things that I've filmed and just never gotten around to editing. And I've got a lot of cool projects that I've completed that I need to do videos on as well, so look forward to that. Listing some of them off the top of my head, I've got a shotgun megalodon, I built a hamp, I built a Meeker Mark 18 Knockout Edition, and then I also have a whole bunch of blasters I need to do reviews on and some gear as well. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm getting really cold out here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.